love watching, Golf Central live from usually at the Ryder Cup or a major, the Masters. And then I'm always watching Brandel Chamblee because chances are he's going to say something to piss somebody off. He's really, really good at that. But I watched yesterday. Brandel, I don't think you upset anybody yesterday. What's going on? You going soft on us?
I don't know. I kind of had an off day, I guess. Yeah, I don't know that I've pissed anybody off this whole week, Dan. I'm on great behavior this week.
Yeah, but I don't like that. I brought this up when you see certain guys, like Freddie Couples is 65, and he shoots a 1-under. But, the familiarity there, he's not going to hit it where everybody hits it. But as Payne Stewart once said to me, our game is about misses. Where we miss and being able to get up and down as opposed to where the average golfer misses. But that local knowledge, how much does that play in with Freddie, being up there, at least hanging in on the leaderboard?
Yeah, I think in a huge way. I mean, there are a lot of things that I think help the elderly at Augusta National. The fairways there are 55 yards wide. Yesterday was just an ideal day for scoring. It wasn't, the course in spots was firm, like 15, but it was a Goldilocks day. It was pretty warm. Wind wasn't blowing. And then Freddie's he's an unbelievably good golfer, and he's aged so well because the swing is long and it's languid and it's loose. It's kind of crazy, if you think about yesterday. Yesterday was really a crazy day. Sneaky, one of the crazier days I think I've seen. You had a guy that won twice last year shoot 90. You had a guy on Social Security that shot 71. And when we talk about somebody relieving themselves or going into Rays Creek, I should say, normally it's because they hit a shot in there, not because they went in there to relieve themselves like the U.S. Amateur champ did yesterday. He said, though, I'll give him a lot of credit. He said it was the largest amount of applause he got all week. And then Rory with the double bogeys coming in.
Back. So he's not in trouble, is he? Because you got to be careful with your demeanor at Augusta. Certainly the patrons do. What about the golfers?
I'm sure the Augusta committee wasn't too happy with him. He said he forgot to go to the bathroom. I don't know how one does that, but you have to be, I guess, judicious. There was a porta potty on the 13th tee. I guess he forgot. And anyway, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you play with it? When you got to go, you got to go. But Rays Creek, and then what else? What else happened crazy yesterday?
Rory on 15, and I was telling people. That looked like a perfect shot. His second shot in, it goes right over the stick. Now it's on the back. Now it's tricky because it borders on that's unbelievable or oh my God. And then Nance said right away, it's gone because it got to that certain point. It had a little bit of momentum, and then Jim says it's gone. It's in the water.
Yeah, after it didn't check that first bounce, you knew it was gone. The players that had hit that shot conservatively or good, it checked the first bounce, or they just were really careful. Like Scotty Scheffler hit it back there, and he was really careful. He landed on the fringe and left it. Really, it's hard to believe it, but it's a chip shot where you got to be conservative. And as firm as that green is, they all knew it. It was such a head shock. Rory, I would imagine you know better than me, but pulling for Rory, and almost everybody in the world of golf pulls for Rory. Is maybe it's akin to, you tell me if this is a decent analogy, I may use it tonight. Would it be like being a Buffalo Bills fan? They're awesome, right? And they just can't quite win the big game. And for the last 10 years, Rory's been there all the time. And then he makes these blunders, these head scratchers in major championships. He's so inconsistent in majors on the one hand, and on the other, he's pretty damn consistent. And you just can't quite figure him out.
Well, Rich Lerner, the great host of the program, says, and you got a little bit frosty, I think, when he said, we might look at this and say Rory lost the tournament with that double bogey at 15 and double bogey at 17. And then you kind of fired back at him. So why do you think Rory is still in this thing?
Because he's playing great. Right up until the blunder at 15, he could have been 7 under par pretty easily, and he was 4 under par, and he had really kind of gotten nothing out of the round. He'd hit so many good shots and not capitalized on them. He played great coming in here, and Rory tends to play his best golf when he's kind of out of it, and he's not out of it. I maintain that the lead is really Scotty Scheffler. That's the person you got to beat. No disrespect to Justin Rose. It's hard to sustain that level of golf that he played yesterday for 4 days. He just made a bogey at the fifth. He's hit some of the worst shots I've seen somebody hit who's leading a golf tournament early in round number two. Fourth hole, par three, pins up front. He laid the sod over his approach shot 50 yards short of the green. I've never seen anybody do that. And he got up and down for par. So he kind of smoke and mirrors, and then he bogeyed five. So my point is, he's four back of Scotty Scheffler. Well, you don't think Rory can make up 4 shots over 3 days? And if I'm Rory, I'm sitting there thinking, I got to go out and get 12 under par over the next 4 days, and that should do it. So, no, I don't think he shot himself out of it. But he made pretty much all the mistakes he could make yesterday.
How does Augusta keep this so the scores don't get out of hand? When you see DeChambeau hitting at 350 yards, and then you got a short iron into a par five, Rory with that. And as you said, you can blast it there. Like if you miss a fairway, it's saying a lot about your driving ability or lack thereof. But what does Augusta continue to do to keep it in a certain number if that's important to them?
Well, the golf course has a lot of length to it. The Augusta, more than any other golf course, I think, in the country, has managed to sort of keep up with the technological and I would say physique changes in the game of golf. The scoring average yesterday was 73.4. Last year it was 73.9. I mean, if you go back 40 years, that's kind of what the scoring average was. So they've kept in step. The greens are firm. They're the most undulating, difficult greens in the game of golf. There's plenty of trouble to wreak havoc out there. So the difficult part of Augusta National is to go around there and not to have some huge blunder. Because if you make a mistake, you make a double, you make a triple. And eventually the winner is the guy who just doesn't make a double bogey for the week. I mean, with few exceptions. And that's why Scotty Scheffler is so unique. What makes Scotty great is not any one thing. It's like what makes any great athlete. It's not any one thing. It's just a number of things. He's long, he's straight, great irons, great chipper, and he's very judicious. He's very methodical about how he plays the game, much in the Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus vein.
But when does he, or has he graduated in, now he's one of the great golfers of all time?
Ooh, gosh, you got to get into rarefied air there. 5, 6, 7 major championships, 25, 30, 35, 40 wins. I mean, he's a 5-year run away from, having that sort of moniker attached to him. I mean, this is what they look like, though, Dan, on the way to being called that. They look like this.
Yeah, and I'm always careful because you see these guys and they're like unbelievable. Then all of a sudden you go, where'd that guy go?
Right. It happened with Jordan Spieth.
Yes.
Where did that guy go? It happened with Justin Thomas. It's like, where did that guy go? Dustin Johnson, where did that guy go? John Rahm to some extent right now. And it's really hard to sustain that. And the reason I think we're inclined to say Scotty Scheffler is going to be less inclined to have those big valleys is because he's not a swing tinkerer. He doesn't think that there's something better next door or somebody knows something. And he's got such a well-balanced family life. I just can't see him jumping to live. I can't see him jumping to swing teachers. I can't see him trying to transform his body and getting injured. And all of those things, those are sort of life existential hurdles I don't think he'll be susceptible to.
He's Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst, and you can watch live from the Masters after the round is concluded. You look at the live guys, and I wondered about playing that style of golf in that environment and then dialing it up to play in this. And John Rahm, I think he played pretty well at Doral. I think he had a couple of bad holes. DeChambeau, I watched him. But the difference between DeChambeau and John Rahm going from Live to Augusta was what yesterday?
I feel like John Rahm feels extra pressure in major championships. He's been criticized for being sort of a turncoat because he had critical remarks about Liv initially and said he'd never leave the tour. Then he did. So he's been a little critical. He goes over there, he plays well, and then he comes and plays poorly in the major championship. So I almost feel like there's a lot of pressure on him to perform. And Bryson, on the other hand, I feel like he uses live events to prepare for major championships. He doesn't really seem to be in them. You go look, and it's not like he's not lighting them up. This is a guy who won the U.S. Open last year, almost won 3 of the 4 major championships, and he hasn't won a live event this year. And live is nowhere near the competition that he would face in major championships. I feel like he really gets up for majors. He's got no pressure on him. It's like the opposite. He frees it up and gets after it.
I think he's great to watch, but it feels like he'll take on anybody. Like he probably says, I'm the best golfer in the world. I don't care what Scotty Scheffler does. I'm still better than him. Like that confidence, he exudes it. Yeah,
he does. It's really fun to watch him. He plays the game with such audacity, he's like a gambler. On the one hand, he's like John Daly, in that he goes after everything. But on the other hand, he's like Ben Hogan. Now, you couldn't find 2 more incongruous figures.
Yeah.
He's relentless in his pursuit of perfection. But then when he gets on the golf course, he plays with absolute reckless abandon. He swings at every single pitch as hard as he can. He couldn't be more different than Scotty Scheffler in the way he plays the game. But the preparation, you got to tip your cap for it. He's out there well after dark a lot of nights. When we're doing live from, we just turn around and there's Bryson on the range getting after it.
I was amazed watching your coverage last night. It's 8:00. He's been done for 3 hours or 2.5 hours. He's out there hammering drives. And you said there's no more daylight here. I think they have. Do they have lights on the driving range there for him? Because he was the only guy who looked like he was out there.
It's funny. I didn't turn around to look, but he was lit like there were lights out there. I don't know that he needs lights because he's got the TrackMan or the quad. He's quad right there, so he just hits and then looks down, and he doesn't need it. And it's dinner time. It's bedtime.
But can you hit too many balls when you're out there?
Yes. Every other player in this field would say yes to that question, but not him. There's a ball count going for the week, and almost everybody. It's pretty cool to watch. The first year I can remember, there's a ball count. There's a group of statisticians that count the balls of every player out there. Data Golf. It's a good follow
on the driving range.
Yeah. Data Golf does this. So I looked at it yesterday, and it had everybody listed, and the most balls to the least balls hit. And you go over here to the least balls hit, and it's all the guys that are playing the best. They got it. They're not looking for it. They got it. And these statisticians, they're brilliant. They do a correlation to where the fewest balls correlates to how well they're playing coming into the week. The most balls correlates to the guys that are playing, except for Bryson, and he's out there hitting thousands of balls over the course of the week. You'd think you'd be sore. You'd think you'd be tired. All of these things you don't want in a major championship, but he does it every dadgum day. As far as I can tell, he doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have a girlfriend. It's just him and those golf balls. And he's like Hogan. He really is. This is something Ben Hogan would be doing.
Do you hold out any hope of Tiger's return? And if so, what will he look like?
I don't know if you probably watched some of the TGL. It was kind of cool to watch. Mm-hmm. And Tiger was swinging great in that thing. And I had all the hope he was going to come back and play some good golf this year. Let's hope. I mean, he's going to be, this year's probably gone. So it'll be 50 before we see him again. But as we've seen with Freddie this week, and as we saw with Phil Mickelson a few years ago, these guys can still play some great golf in their 50s. Tiger's ball speed, when I was watching him in the TGL this year, Dan, was like it was close to 180 miles an hour, and he was pushing off that right foot, which got mangled in that last accident. So, I won't say no, but it's really far fetched, at this point.
I'll leave you with this. I did a story on Byron Nelson. So when he was alive, I went down to his ranch. And he couldn't swing the club anymore. He was a lot older, but he wanted to hold the golf club. And so we're out on the ranch, and Hogan was still alive. And I said to Byron, do you think you could call Ben Hogan and I could do a feature? We were doing Legends of the PGA Tour. And he looked at me, he goes, oh, no. And I said, but I just, I guess he didn't live very far from Byron. And I'm thinking, hey, if Byron would call Ben Hogan, maybe Ben Hogan would do a sit-down interview with me.
Better.
Byron looked at me, and he's a gentleman. He was one of the nicest people, and he just gave me this look like, that might be the dumbest question I've heard. Nobody messes with Ben. Nobody wants to call him.
I commend you for the ask. I mean, Gary Player famously called him sometime, after he'd won a couple of majors and said, I'm having problems with this or that in my game. And Ben Hogan said, whose clubs do you play, Gary? And he said, well, I'm playing Slazenger. And he said, why don't you call Mr. Slazenger and ask him? I mean, he was a hard ass.
Oh,
but
my
I would have
God.
loved you to interview him. I would have loved to see if you could get him to laugh and open up, because he was a tough character to crack.
And people are still looking at his swing as the greatest golf swing ever. Now, I would put Sam Snead up there too.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sam Snead.
Athleticism.
Yeah.
Sam Snead, even when he was in his 70s.
Yeah, there was a sort of a lyrical charm to Sam Snead's swing, folksy. But with Hogan, it had everything. It had power. It had the geometry. It had the artistry. It was like he was Mikhail Baryshnikov. It's like you just couldn't believe somebody could swing a golf club that good. Nobody today comes close to swinging a golf club as good as Ben Hogan. Nobody. He didn't have TrackMan. He didn't have video. I don't know how he did it, Dan. I don't know how he came.
You think it's the greatest golf swing ever?
Yeah, a Tiger 2000 is the closest thing, in my opinion. That's a dead heat. I think Hogan gets him in the end, but because Tiger had every asset of the game. But from a if you said who would you most like to swing a golf club? Good Lord, Ben Hogan. Yeah, unbelievable.
I look at Hogan like Leonardo da Vinci, so ahead of his time in what he did, and Hogan did that to the golf swing. And
Yeah, there's an issue. You could probably find this. You go back and you look. Hogan famously won the 50 U.S. Open after that accident, and he tied with, if I'm not mistaken, Lloyd Mangrum, who'd won the 46 U.S. Open, and George Fazio. Right, two phenomenal golfers, and you go watch them tee off on the first hole of the playoff, and then George hits, Lloyd Mangrum hits, and then Hogan hits. And if you just were watching the video of those three golfers who all tied in the U.S. Open, you would think, comparatively speaking, and I don't mean this disparagingly, you would think the first two were drunks at a driving range. And then because the symmetry, the movement, the grace, the power, every movement had a purpose in Hogan's swing. It's the most beautiful thing in the history of golf. No question about that in my mind.
Play nice today.
I don't know. I'll try to piss somebody off for you. Okay, I don't want you disappointed for the week, Dan.
I don't know. Take a shot at Mickelson.
That's gotten too easy.
Does he ever come up and say something to you? Did he come up and say something to you?
Well, we have mutual friends, good friends. His kind of best friends are kind of my good friends, and we've a time or two talked about getting together and having a powwow. It hadn't happened yet. I like Phil. I miss his golf. I think he's a smart guy, and I think if he were sitting across from me, we would have a good-natured back and forth. I don't think he's bitter. I don't think he holds grudges. But I miss his golf. I wish he were back here playing the tour. I wish he hadn't left.
Yeah, because he was going to be Arnie. He was going to be.
He wasn't, and I'll tell you this: he would be sitting in that lead chair, doing commentary, killing it in outings. He'd be making $40-50 million a year, and I think he'd be great in the booth. He'd be a Ryder Cup captain.
Yeah, I know.
He'd be entertaining us and all that.
Yeah.
So I do. Golf misses him, I think.
Thank you, Brandel. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too. Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst.